Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Since long I'm trying to record a new video, and the today video I'm going to discuss about the some interview questions like rest assured APA interview question. So APA interview question, whenever you are going in an interview as a tester, so most of the companies asking for the APA testing. So definitely you might be, as a tester, you might be worked on the rest assured API, and there is a multiple API. Okay, so might be you have working on the Spring Boot, Rest Assured, and the Cypress, and many other things. As an automation tester you might be worked on. So today I'm going to discuss about the few interview question related to Rest Assured API. I will cover these interview question in two videos. Okay, and so I will try to elaborate all the questions. Okay, first we will discuss about the what is an API. So this is the most basic things you have to know about that API if you are working on that or if you are new to that. So what is the API actually? So basically, if you will search it out on Google, there are multiple definition about the API testing. Okay, so first, what is the full form? It is API, that is the application programming interface. Interface means mediator layer, middle layer. Okay, it's represent like a mediator, as per the name. If I will say what is the interface. Okay, so API basically middle layer होता है, आप ये बोल सकते हैं उसको. और ये वर्क कैसे करता है? सपोज आई विल गिव यू वन एग्जांपल फर्स्ट. सो अगर आपको एपीआई के बारे में नहीं पता है तो यू विल बी एबल टू क्लिक करेंगे इस आंसर को, विच आई एम ट्राइंग टू गिव यू एन एग्जांपल. सो एपीआई क्या होता है बेसिकली? जैसे कि आप किसी एक रेस्टोरेंट में जाते हैं, रेस्टोरेंट में जाके आप ऑर्डर करते हैं तो डायरेक्टली आप शेफ से नहीं मिलते हैं. So you will ask to waiter and you will give your order. So waiter will take your order, and then he will go to the chef. Chef will check and he will prepare your food, and then waiter will collect that food and it will serve to you. Okay, so this is the process. So here waiter is react as a API. In simple technical term, so when you are trying to process a request, okay, so that request is going to that client to server, you can say. In between the client to server, there is a middle API that is called the API thing. So client will take your request and will send the response, and then it will go to the server, and server will back to the client. So that particular thing, client and server, in technical term client and server, and that is the middle layer. Okay, in बीच वाला. So इन दोनों की रिक्वेस्ट और रिस्पॉन्स को जो एक्सचेंज करता है वो एपीआई होता है. इन रियल टाइम एग्जांपल, व्हेन यू आर गिविंग द इंटरव्यू, so you have to explain based on your real time example. So if you will check on Google, there's a multiple thing: client and server, server to client, client to server. These kind of response you can get from the Google, you can read it out. But when you are trying to explain by giving a real time example, like I have given the restaurant one, this is one example. And if you can explain about, there is a multiple API like Google Maps API, Amazon advertising API, and Twitter API, there is a YouTube API. So it is all these APIs working like that. So this is a particular example. So basically, when you are trying to give the definition about the API, so you can say like, an API, application programming interface, is a software intermediary that enables two application to communicate with each other. राइट. सो एक मिडिल लेयर होती है जो क्लाइंट और सर्वर, इन दोनों के बीच में कम्युनिकेशन करने का जो काम करता है वो आपका एपीआई कहलाता है. इट कंप्रोमाइज अ नंबर ऑफ सब रूटीन डेफिनेशंस, logs and tool for creating application software. There is a multiple things you can give an example. And you can write like API testing interview. Basically, you could be asked to give some API example. They can ask like, give me some API example you have worked on or you have used in your in your project. So simply you can give the few examples like everyone knows about those API like Google Maps API, Amazon advertising API, Twitter API, and YouTube API. So basically, what is an API? API is an application programming interface, or you can say application programming interface is a software intermediary that enables two applications to communicate with each other. and then you can give the example like I have given. So that you are going to visit a one restaurant kind of, so this is the real time example you can give. There is a multiple example, okay, you can create. You can create a ticket booking example, okay, this is also that particular API. So the next question, what are the main difference between API and web service? This question can raise. So first question I'm going to write here. If you want to save, you can save as a notes. Okay. So here only I'm going to write. First I have what is an API. Okay, this I have given the answer. And the next question, what are main difference between API and web service? Okay, this is the next question. So all web service are API, but not all API are web services. You have to remember this. All web service, any web service, okay, are APIs, but not all APIs are web services. Web service might not contain all the specification and cannot perform all the tasks that API would perform. Okay, because a API service use only three styles. You heard it about if you are a tester, definitely. Like a web service use only three styles of, that is SOAP, REST, and XML. RPC for communication, where API may be exposed to in multiple ways. Okay, so this you have to be remember. So whenever you are trying to give an example for the API and web services, you have to be remember these things. First note, all web service are APIs, but not all APIs are web service. Second, web service might not contain web service might not contain all the specification and cannot perform all the tasks that API would do. But a web service use only three styles of that use. You have to give this example. First, SOAP, 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 REST, REST, REST in XML, RPC for communication, whereas API may be exposed to in multiple ways. So these are the basic difference in API and web service. Okay, so API working as a request, there is no there is no UI. Everything will perform by API only, so there is a no UI. Okay, you have to be communicate, there is no layout, you cannot see the layout, you can, so how you will perform your action? By using API only. So web and API both are different. Okay, so these are the two questions which I have explained to you in this video, and another we will be talking about that JSON things, and I will give you the example more. Okay, so suppose people can ask you like how you will call your request, what will be the HTTP methods you are going to use in your API, in your REST assured API, and what is the difference between get, post, and put. Most of the method can be asked that what is the patch method, okay, and where you are using that patch method and why, what is the requirement, and in which scenario you are going to use this. Okay, so these are these are the basic concept the interviewer can ask you related to the API, and also they can ask you about the JSON file. Okay, so like next I will give you one more point about this, related to that web service. Basically the web service always need a network to operate, while API do not need a network for operations. Okay, and along with this they can ask you one more questions. So what are the limit of API uses? Okay, so you can give the response like that. Many API have a certain limit set up by the provider. First thing, because you never know which API is having the which limit. So when we are working on the project is based on that. So you can write down. Try to estimate your usage and understand how that will be impact the overall cost of the offering which you are working on. So it's not in your hand. So you can say like API have certain limits set up by the providers. Okay, whether this will be a problem depending in a large part on how data is leveraged. Okay, getting caught by a code that effectively cut off because of budget limitation will render the service in any system or process depending on it the virtual useless. Okay, so this is not in your hand, but might be they can ask, so you can give the kind of answer, you can modify your answer as per that. So creating API, how to create the API. This is the basic question. So what is an API, and what is the use of API? What is web service, and what is this is the basic. So some, if you are a fresher, might be they can ask. If you will say like I am having 1 year of experience, kind of, so they can. But if you are having more than 1 years of experience, they might be asking in details. So like the question they will ask you, what are some architectural style for creating a web API? So I'm going to write the question here. They can ask you like what are some, spelling is correct or not? Okay, I will correct that is styles for creating a web API. Okay, so this is one of the fundamental web API interview question ever asked. Sometimes they use plus, sometimes not. But be prepared for the very basic, because an interviewer never going to ask you in a depth, because everyone know that you can Google it and you can resolve that question. But base is strong, so definitely they used to try to be ask you the basic questions. So I mean, there is a fourth thing like HTTP for client server communication. Okay, XML or JSN mostly they use, because if you are using the, if you are using the SOAP UI, so in that you use the XML for request and response. Okay, but here in the rest assured mostly you have used the JSN. Okay, so you can tell them like HTTP for client server communication, second the XML JSON as a formatting language, and simple URI as the address of the service. And sometimes they used to ask the URI definition as well. What is that URL and URI? Okay, they can ask. So some, when people, whether we know this, but when interviewer asks, sometimes we forgot. So URI identify resource and different if in it from other by using a name like location or both. So URL identify the web address. So what is the, I mean, full form? They can ask you URL, you will say like universe locators kind of. So URI is a uniform resource identifier, and URL is a uniform resource locator. So there is a one difference is identifier and locator. Okay, so this is the answer is that, and you can say your URL is the subset of URI. Okay, so there is a multiple difference. You can search on a Google on the on this particular point. So let's discuss the another point. So simple URI is the address for the service, and the another one is the stateless communication. So these are the four architectural style that will happen when you are using the API. Okay, first HTTP for client server communication, second XML JSON as a formatting language, and third is a simple URI as the address for the services, and fifth is a stateless communication. Okay, so the next question might be, I mean, these are the basic things, so might be asked or not, but I'm going to cover everything because I have find it from Google with the help of I have interviewed and all this kind of. So that's why I have collect these particular question, going to share it with you. If it will be helping, you can read it about. So who can use a web API? Okay, so it's a very basic question. A web API can be consumed by any clients which support HTTP verbs such as get, put, delete, post methods. Okay, since web API service do not require since web API service do not require configuration, they can be easily used by client. Okay, so you can say like web API can be consumed by any client which support all these methods. Those methods are get, put, delete, post, patch, all these methods. Since web API services do not require configuration, they can be easily used by client, any client. Okay. In fact, even portable devices as well. Portable devices as well. So the way you can give this answer. And now, what is an API we have covered? Now the question is, व्हाट इज एन एपीआई टेस्टिंग. सो एपीआई क्या होता है ये भी आपको मालूम पड़ गया है. बट नेक्स्ट, अब एपीआई टेस्टिंग क्या होता है अभी आपने पढ़ा व्हाट इज एन एपीआई. सो नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज व्हाट इज एन एपीआई टेस्टिंग. सो आप बोलेंगे कि किसी भी एपीआई को टेस्ट करना क्या होता है आपका, एपीआई टेस्टिंग कहलाता है. करेक्ट है ये बात भी. सो एपीआई टेस्टिंग इज अ काइंड ऑफ सॉफ्टवेयर. What is that? API testing is a kind of software that meet acceptations regarding, the request which you have sent to the server, and server will it will you will get the response and you send back to the client. Definitely, this is only the answer. And mostly we use the API testing for security of purpose, security of applications like banking application. There is a multiple APIs you can use. It's not something like, so those are not having the web UI. So for that, and the next question they can ask, what is the advantage by using this API testing. So पहला है आपका टेस्ट फॉर कोर फंक्शनलिटी, टाइम इफेक्टिवली और लैंग्वेज इंडिपेंडेंट. सो देर इज नो इंडिपेंडेंट, देर इज नो डिपेंडेंसी. ओके, सो you can say time effectively test for your core functionality. You can test by each and each columns, each headers, and what are the producing the output, and you can set the you know your active response as well, and service code and language independent. So these are the advantages you can tell. And I will give you the example. Suppose you are using the Postman tool for testing that particular API. You have import your API, and once you will be importing your API and that having the get method, suppose, so you will go to the header will be having that host, agent, accept, and all these headers point will be having. So once you will try to be execute that, so you will get that particular response and it will be written in a JSON. Okay, so these kind of things we do in a testing. Okay, so I'm going to explain you about that new questions. Okay, or if you want to give the some example like why test for core functionality, so you can give like API testing provide access to the application without a user interface. So the core and code level of functionality of the application will be used or will be test evaluated early before the GUI testing, graphical user interface. So आपका स्क्रीन पे जाने से पहले आप उसको टेस्ट कर सकते हो, जिसको बैक एंड टेस्टिंग भी बोलते हो, आप ऐसा भी कर सकते हो. तो बेसिकली उसके लिए आपका ये यूज़ होता है. और ऐसे आप एक अपने तरफ से भी कुछ एग्जांपल बना सकते हैं. इट्स जस्ट अ थियोरेटिकल थिंग, not ask much, but yeah, they can ask, so you should be prepared related to that. Okay, suppose you are having one application there, you need to be registered, so you are having that particular API. So what is the labels and what is the variables you are going to be write and input for those fields. So you will import that API in the Postman, and you are going to be you are going to be give all the inputs fields, and you will try to validate each and every label and every field. So those type of testing you can be perform. Okay, so these are the advantage. So E2E testing kind of it's happen. Okay, but E2E testing is different on, and rest assured APIs are different, but I'm just giving an example. Like बिल्कुल core से आप इसको test कर सकते हैं. So this is the biggest advantage to use that particular API on for the testing. Okay. Okay, next questions I will trying to be complete here. So they can might be ask you related to that your JSON request, how you will perform and how you will send the request, and how you will create the object. What is the full steps to be perform the basic operation using the REST assured API. So definitely this is the very 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 important question they might can you ask, so you have to be prepared related to that. Okay, so I have covered about the what is an API testing, and I'm going to repeat it again. API testing is a kind of software testing that determines if the developed APIs meet expectations regarding the functionality, reliability, performance, and the security of the application. Okay, so you can give the example, and if they can ask you about the advantage, you can simply say test for the core functionality. Like API testing provide access to the application without a user interface. So the core and core level of functionality of the application will be tested and evaluated early before the GUI rests. This will help detect the minor issues as well, which can become bigger during the GUI testing. So जो भी आपको इशू रहेंगे, छोटा मोटा भी इशू, वो आपको पहले से पता चल जाएगा, तो डेफिनेटली दे विल रिजॉल्व इट बिफोर अपडेटिंग एज अ GUI. Time effectively, definitely API testing usually is less time consuming than functional GUI testing. The web element in GUI testing must be pooled, which makes the testing power slower. Okay, so this is the biggest advantage. You can say language independent in the API testing, data is exchanged using XML or JSON. So these transfer modes are completely language independent, allow user to be select the query based on your which language you are using, and they can adopting automation tools. So these are the, I mean, basic things. Like it will allow user to select any code language when adopting automation testing service from the project. Okay, so this is the these are the advantages. Many more advantages there, but if you will explain these things, so though that will be enough. Okay. So they can ask you some common protocol used in API testing. So you can say many protocols are now available to be used in API testing. जैसे आपका JMS होता है, REST होता है, STD होता है, UDDI होता है, and SOAP होता है. Mostly तो हम REST और SOAP ही use करते हैं. But if they will ask the question, you should heard about these, you know, terms, technical terms. So you can explain like that. Okay, and another question, so what is the test environment of API? So they will check this these things. Okay, so basically setting up the API test environment is not an easy task, because you should have a ready answer whenever you are tried, because they will check here, they will check if they will ask you the test environment of API, and interviewer will check, and he will able to get by your answer like whether you have worked on the API or not. So you have to moderate your answer in the kind of way, even if you didn't work, so they should know like, yeah, you have worked on, and even less work, so you will be able to cope up, and you will be able to, you know, work on that particular application if we are giving as a rest assured API testing task. So so you should have the ready answer, like if you your API testing interview is coming. Okay, and they will ask you this question: what is the environment of API? So this answer should be ready, and you can, like, the test environment of API is a bit complete and require the configuration of the database and server. So you there is no UI, so you directly cannot say I will log in the application, I will launch the URL, then I will log in the application, I will then blah blah blah. You can say like then I will click on the submit button, then it will check the whether credential is correct or not. So there is nothing like that. Okay, so there is a particular process. Okay, so first you can say the test environment of API is a bit complete and requires the configuration of database, the server, depending on the software requirement. Okay, so there is no GUI. What is the full form of GUI? You already know, I guess. Graphical user interface is available in the test form. When the installation process is complete, API is verified for the operations. Okay, proper operations like card create, update, delete, create card application, you heard, like CURD, create, update, retrieve, and delete. Okay, so throughout the process, the API call from the original environment is set up with the different parameter to study the test results. So it's a different, totally different thing. But you can say like we will install that. We will, after that we will set up that all the operations. We will verify all the operations working fine. So the API you will import, and they will test that particular API in the particular event. Okay, environment. So what are the principle of an API test design? Okay, oh, I forgot to write the question here. So first question which I have discussed about, that was the some common protocol protocol used in API testing. You can write, and the next, what is the test environment? This is hardly asked, this is not that much asked by the interviewer, but be ready if someone can ask. I mean, what are the principle of an API test design? So here till now it is the theoretical of question I have discussed about. Now after completing these, I am going to give you the coding based questions which asked in an interview. Okay, so what are the principle of an API design? So the basically principle about that API design, they can ask like, this is related to the previous questions, like the five most important principle of an API test design are: setup. First is setup. because this question can ask not in the simple ways. Here just I have written what are the principle on API test design, right? But they won't ask you like that. They will simply ask just one, create a one. Suppose you are having that particular one API, and just you have to create an object to the particular API and try to get validate the response. So to validate the response also kind of the question they can ask. Okay, but the at the end this is all the steps you have to be given as an answer once interviewer asks. So you can say the five most important principle of an API design are: setup. What will comes in a setup? I mean, you will create the object, start your service, initialize your data, kind of all these things, variables, whatever you are using. Second, execution. Step to apply API or the scenarios, including your logging, checking logs and everything. Verification, Oracle to evaluate the result of the database. If you are having the database connectivity, so you will verify the data is correct or not. Reporting, past, fail or blocked. Cleanup, pre-test state. So if you are giving this kind of answer, that's fine. They are not going to ask you more. They will understand, yes, you have worked on the testing and you practically have the knowledge about that. Okay. So um, this is enough. If they will ask you about the writing a code, you can check in Google and just give the heads up like one example. So whenever you are giving even the Selenium interview or REST assured API interview, I will suggest, as per my experience, at least try one example by your own. So whenever you are giving the example, you will come to know about the technical terms which are using during your execution or your first work execution. I'm not saying like just execute all applications or complete application. No, just one scenario. I mean, login scenario. That's enough, because the steps are same for all the scenarios. Okay. So just you have to remember this point. So what are the common API testing type? So common API testing means they can ask you about that validation testing, functional testing, UI testing, load testing, runtime, और एरर डिडक्शन टेस्टिंग, सिक्योरिटी टेस्टिंग, blah blah, बहुत सारे टेस्टिंग हैं वो, मुझे इतना याद है, एंड देन यू कैन फाइंड इट ऑन गूगल. सो यू विल गेट मल्टीपल, I think 16, 17 or 10, 12 type of testing. Okay, what are the procedure to perform API testing? So your next question can be, what is the procedure for performing the API testing? So suppose I'm giving the example to add the API test case. Okay, so choose the test development mode, demand the development of test cases required for API method, configure that and configure the method of validation, then execute the API, check test report and filter API test cases, then arrange all the API test cases and then execute and then validate your response. So this can be. So next is what must be checked when performing API testing. Yes, this is the hands down question, because sometimes I used to give the wrong answer. But you have to be remember all these which I'm going to explain you right now. I have written these answers like, during the API testing process, a request is raised to the API. What we know is that the API is having the data, right? Suppose the CRUD application I'm having, so that will be having the data. So using that, you are creating your request, then you are updating that, you are retrieving the data, and then you are deleting that particular things. Okay. जैसे कि आप कहीं पे एक ऑर्डर की ऐप है, मुझे ऑनलाइन ऑर्डर लेना है, तो आपको क्रिएट करना है नया ऑर्डर. ओके, जो ऑर्डर आपने क्रिएट कर लिया है उसको रिट्रीव करना है, जो आपने क्रिएट किया था उसको आपको अपडेट करना है, और जो ऑर्डर कंप्लीट हो चुका है उसको आपको डिलीट करना है. So these things are says the talking about the CRUD application. So during the API testing process, a request is raised to the API. That request, I just give an example as a restaurant online food booking app. Okay, so this way you can analyze the validation response. While testing an API, you should consider one main thing: accuracy of data. Accuracy of data, schema validation, HTTP status code, data type, validation, order and completeness, and then authorization checks. Few is having pre-authorization check, that is authorization 1, authorization 2.0, 1.0. So those are the different things. Just remember all these things. Implementation of response timeout, error codes in a case of API returns, you have to validate all these things. And non-functional testing like performance and security testing, if you are using the database, you can check the DB validation as well. Okay, so what is the best approach method to perform API testing? What is the best? सो बेस्ट अप्रोच क्या होता है आपका? बेस्ट अप्रोच कुछ नहीं होता है. बेस्ट अप्रोच वो होता है जो आप अपने प्रोजेक्ट में यूज कर रहे होते हैं, बिकॉज दिस इज नॉट ऑल टाइम आर सेम विच अप्रोच यू आर यूजिंग. ओके, but you have to validate some kind response. 400 bad request, 401 unauthorized. So here interviewer can ask you about what will the service code you will get in case of unauthorized servers, or 401 is used for which status code. So 400 bad requests, 401 unauthorized, 402 payment required, 403 forbidden, and so on. Okay, so those things you have to be learned about. But let's come to the question which I have told you. So definitely, what is the best approach method to perform API testing? So these are the methods. Defining the correct input parameter first. Best approach is you have to define the correct input parameters, verifying the calls of the mixture of two or more added value parameters, defining the basic functionality and scope of the API program, writing appropriate API test cases, and making use of testing technique such as equivalence class, boundary values, and to check the operability and test case execution at the end. Okay, so this is the very important questions they can ask. And also remember, comparing the test result with the expected result, this is the main thing. Even the functional testing, automation testing, or the rest assured API testing. Okay, so I mean these things I have covered about that basic interview question about that rest assured API testing. Okay, so prepare this, and in the next video I'm going to explain you some more important questions. Here we can continue here as well, but video will be long. Like, what are the difference between API testing and unit testing? Might be they can ask. So API testing means conducted by the QA team, and unit testing conducted by the development team. Also you can say mostly black box testing is the API testing, and white box testing is the unit testing. These are the you can read it from Google also. Okay, so the main difference you can say, often run after the build is ready to author, do not have the access to the source code in case of API testing. But in case of unit testing, each of the code module must be ensured to the pass the unit test before being built by developers, because developer mostly used to do the unit testing, not testers. Okay, अभी यूआई टेस्टिंग एंड एपीआई टेस्टिंग में क्या डिफरेंस होता है, ये मैंने ऑलरेडी कवर कर लिया है आपका. यूआई मतलब वेब टेस्टिंग होती है. एपीआई में आपके पास कोई पेज नहीं होता है, कोई स्क्रीन नहीं होती है. लेकिन यूआई टेस्टिंग में आपके पास वेब होना चाहिए. एपीआई में आपके पास एपीआई होती है जिसमें जो आपका क्लाइंट रेस्पॉन्स और रिक्वेस्ट और रेस्पॉन्स के लिए यूज होती है. मेजर चैलेंजेस, ये क्वेश्चन आपसे पूछ सकता है. व्हाट आर द मेजर चैलेंजेस फेस्ड इन एपीआई टेस्टिंग? So if you can overcome the challenges in API testing, you can be confident in the API testing interview too, even you have worked or not. So you should have this point remember. Okay, पहला है parameter selection, parameter combination, call sequencing, and output verification and validation. Another important challenge is providing input values. It is very difficult as UI is not available in the case. So you can tell all these things. As I told you, if you are going to be interview for web API testing or rest assured API testing, doesn't matter, just prepare one example. I'm not asking you again complete API or complete web application testing. Just prepare one example, so that example give you confidence whenever they will ask you the question, and most of the questions will be, you can give by that example only, because you no need to remember all such things even if you have worked or not. Okay, so the process is same for all at the time, but you keep remember these things. Main importing the challenge is providing input values, which is very difficult as GUI is not available in the case. What are the testing method that comes under API testing? So testing methods, unit testing, functional testing, load testing, and performance testing. So you can give this example. Okay, so that also I have covered, and there you can give the Amazon application API example, you can give. Okay, so these are the questions which interview might can be asked. So we will stop here this recording, and I will cover another video. There is a 20-25 more interview questions which I'm having. So I have explained 10 12. Oh, I didn't return, but I was giving the example so you can listen that video audio. Okay. Thank you so much for watching, and if you are preparing for the interview and about for the rest assured API, and you are having the question, please comment it out. And if you are looking for any solution, you can comment, so I will try to give answers as by my knowledge, and will try to solve and will try to give my 100%. Thank you so much for watching.